Hey, this is Chris Johnson with the Lenovo EBG Worldwide Marketing Team. We're here with Matt Archibald from Lab Services to talk about power efficiency. We've gotten some questions from the field claiming that they are hearing that Cisco is saying they are #1 in power efficiency. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit and find out maybe why that isn't so.
Okay, good question. We see this one a lot actually. So we'll get right into it. We have to understand where power is used in a system. So I've taken a system, 2U system, 120 watt processors for typical configuration, 24 DIMMs, 24 hard drives, 6 I/O cards. And I've broken this system up by each subsystem's power consumption. And as you can see, the processors consume the most power in the system. Hard drives, because we have 24 of them and they're spinning drives, that consumes the second most, and memory consumes the third. And if you look at the combination of memory, processors, hard drive, plus PCI cards, that's about 85% of a system's power consumption right there.
And across those, all the vendors are using the same components.
Correct. Every server vendor in the world is using Intel processors. They're using memory that's made by either Samsung, Hynix, Micron, or another vendor. Hard drives are the same from Hitachi, Toshiba, Seagate. I/O cards are the same from QLogic, Emulex, Broadcom, and Intel. So those are things that the server vendors don't control, don't have influence over.
So what do the vendors have control over?
Server vendors have control over determining how efficient a power supply is going to be and how efficient their fans are going to be. And also how accurate or how efficient the cooling algorithm is going to be. So as you see on this chart here, you go ahead, about 13% of our server's configuration is under a vendor's control. Every vendor that uses a power supply is going to have power supply loss. That's what we call power supply efficiency. Right now, every vendor is designing to the same power supply efficiency standard, so we can safely assume that 80 plus platinum or 80 plus titanium has about a 9% power supply efficiency loss at 100% load or at full load. For this example, we're saying power supply efficiency is about 7%. So out of that 13%, 7% every vendor is going to incur. That's a necessary evil of providing power to the system.
So you're saying the vendor really only controls 6% of the system?
Every vendor has to cool their components. That means fans consume power. So some vendors can use better, higher quality fans. Other vendors can use just simple static rotor fans. System X uses dual rotor countersink fans that go ahead and they're some of the most efficient fans on the market. That's how one way that we put components into the box to minimize power. The other part of that is how we use the fans. We don't just turn the fans on and let them spin at max. We control them with a very complex algorithm based on the server's inlet temperature and the load of the system. When the system's at low load, the fan spins slow. When the system increases in load or uses more power, it generates more heat. The fans need to spin faster to cool it. So we go ahead, we put that in. We only want to cool the components as much as they need, so we're saving power on the fans. So out of that remaining 6%, we go ahead and we have probably about 3 to 4% that's everybody's going to incur. Which means at the end of the day, there's only about 3 to 5% of the total system power that a vendor really has any influence over.
So the vendor only has 3 to 5% control over that power envelope. How does that equate to dollars?
So that equates to dollars with a very simple example. If you had a 100-watt light bulb and you left that light bulb on for an entire year and your utility rate was 10 cents a kilowatt hour, that would cost you $87.60 a year. So let's look at 2% difference between two vendors, vendor A and vendor B. If the system was a 500-watt server and we had a 2% difference between them, that would be a total of 10 watts, or only $8.70.
So small numbers when you're talking apples to apples on one server.
Correct. I'm not downplaying energy. Energy is extremely important, but when you're looking at multiple server vendors with the same platform, meaning rack server to rack server or blade solution to flex, the difference is going to only be about 3 to 5%, and it's very little. There may be other things that are much more important, but the weight behind the difference in energy just isn't there.
All right, so let's wrap up. Let's give our sellers a 10-second spiel to talk about power to their clients.
Power is very simple. Energy is important. When any vendor is claiming that there's a large difference between similarly configured systems, it's just not there. It can't be more than 5%. We've shown that.
So to wrap up, if you're hearing that a competitor is focusing on energy, I think there's a bigger story there. So the sellers need to dig in and figure out what story they are trying to spin. It's important to remember, just like Matt said, you're looking at server to server. There's not going to be a huge difference. So again, we appreciate your time. Thanks, Matt, for coming on. Again, if you have any questions, you can send a note to ebgcompete@lenovo.com, and we will get back to you within 24 hours with a response. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.